If you could open your phones up, if you have like a smartphone or something, a tablet, I sent Louise the link. It's in your book too. It's find, all one word, findmyspiritualgift.com. Right up there, findmyspiritualgift.com. And there are other sites out there that are denominational and that you don't want to go onto those sites because they're going to take you down a path that is nothing really about the Bible. I had somebody one time type in the wrong one, and this is the only one in the Brotherhood this is the only publication even talking about this. In fact, if you look on the reviews for Amazon, there's even a guy, member of the church, who's a professor, who used this as a primary resource for his dissertation, for his doctorate. So if you scroll down, once you go to that, if you scroll down, see where it says take the test. Click that. Now scroll down. Yeah, get rid of the ad. Now, it's right there. You see, is this participation of a group? Check yes. Check yes. And then put in Salina. Just put in Salina so that way when they come in, they'll go into a category that I could test you as a congregation and write a 9-page, or it could be probably 7 to 9-page detailed report with graphs and charts, strategies and everything that I want your eldership and your leadership to have so they can better plan the mission around the congregation versus the other way around. When you take the test, do not dwell long on there. If you're taking more than 10 minutes to take this test, you've taken too long. It says, I'm directing speaking to people about being wrong. If that's never, if it's rarely, just rank them 1 to 5. If it's always you, if it's really descriptive of you, then you click the always. If it's never, if you don't know for sure, sometimes just pick the one in the middle. Okay? But these 80 questions are going to categorize your feelings on these 80 questions into objective categories, and that's your starting point at that. And so they're pretty simple questions. You don't have to study for it. Don't worry. It seems easy to learn difficult subjects. Does that really describe me? 1 to 5? Well, if it never describes you, if that's definitely not you, then you check never. If it's really you, then you check always. If it's kind of you, rarely, often, you just pick the answer and then it will go in and tabulate the total. It'll send me an email. All I have to do is type in Salina and all the emails come up. Then I can actually tabulate each one of the scores into the logarithm, and then it will produce the data that I need. And so that's where it's located at. You can also take the test in the back of your book as well, but then you got to add it up and everything. Now, what I would do is if you take it online, go ahead and write the results in your book that you took it online. Let's go ahead and get to the shepherding side now. PowerPoint, there we go. Now we're going to cover 2 more, session 5, the passion of shepherding and encouragement. Shepherding. Ephesians 4:11, he gave some as pastors and teachers. The Greek word there is poimen, which is shepherd. Poimen, shepherd of the sheep. And though on average, about 16% of people test number 1 in this category. It's one of the larger ones. Servant is first, mercy giver second, shepherding third. Between those 3, you're looking at like 60% of a congregation usually. Nobody had a greater passion of shepherd than Jesus Christ. Matthew 2:6, and you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, for out of you shall come forth a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. He's been always known as the shepherd. John 10:11, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Hebrews 13:20, he's called the great shepherd of the sheep. 2:25 of 1 Peter, he's the shepherd and guardian of our souls. 1 Peter 5:4, the chief shepherd. He's the lamb at the center of the throne that should be their shepherd and guide them to the springs of the waters of life. Revelation 7:17. He had the passion of a shepherd. Now, a shepherd, a good way to think of a shepherd is that whereas the administrator comes up with plans, the shepherd on the other side of the tracks comes up with people. They're the motivators for groups of people. They like to see. You can tell a lot about people by what movies they like. You really can. I'll do an experiment here in a minute. But we understand what a shepherd does. I'm not going to go into great detail on that. They're just guardians of the sheep. But if they're mature shepherds, they are incredibly protective. They guard against wolves, false sheep, against the roaring lion. You know, the shepherds are the ones, when there's division in the church, the ones who suffer the most, without a doubt, are the shepherds, because they like to see the whole flock working together. They do. We had a lady in Camp Hill named Sister Arby. She was a flaming shepherd. She was really super, super strong in that. She also happened to answer only to the governor. Her office that she held, her appointment was the head of the EEOC. I mean, she was like, everybody had a voice. She was, that's how she was. And I remember we had an issue in the church where we were trying to deal with somebody, some church discipline, and we were just trying to address it as the leadership, and the person stormed out of there, never went to the church. But I remember Arby called a meeting with the elders, and she came in and she said, "What is going on here? Why is that person leaving?" Well, she knew nothing about this other thing. And when she found out, she settled down. But boy, when there's stress in the church, they are quick to react. And so what I said, Arby, what are you doing for your passion within the church? What's your ministry? And what we did is, because a lot of times, you know, in this society, in 1920, like 90% of every woman was married. Today, that isn't so. And when you have young ladies in the congregation, or any lady who is not really represented there, you know, what do you do when you have the elders who need to meet with a member of the church who's a lady? You know, that could be very, very intimidating. You know, and so what we did was, Arby would be the advocate for them. She would always be in there to support them, help guide them, because a mature shepherd is going to help them overcome problems too. But we didn't want somebody to we didn't want any lady not to have the loving support of a strong, encouraging, shepherding woman with that passion. She did great on that. We have to employ shepherds. Too many times we just kind of let them round up their own sheep. Give them something to do. They're patient. They're willing to wait for growth, willing to wait for punishment, willing to wait for rescue. Those are mature qualities. Because a lot of times you'll have immature shepherds, and they act like their bodyguard, and they go, "Boo!" and they're diving in front of bullets. That, you know, sometimes it's good for someone to take the bullet, you know, to not. The difference between empowering and enabling is oftentimes whether or not you rescue somebody too quick. You know, like I said, I wasn't a mercy giver. I could fake it with the best of you, but my heart's not really in it. Okay, I give up. But like my kids, when they were running around, if I told them, "Stop running around, you're going to trip and fall," or something. If they tripped and fell, So now you learn what gravity is, okay? Yeah, you need some Bactine for that. This hurts too, like that, you know. But you know, somebody who's a mercy giver, no, and they're just in there hugging and kissing and stuff. I'm not kissing a wound that you brought on yourself. I'm not, you know, people. Now, if you're a mercy giver, you're saying you're cruel and unusual. Okay, just keep talking. No, but who's right? Who's right? The mercy giver who feels the ability to stand in another person's shoes, or the one who's not a mercy giver, who might be a confronter and a teacher who wants to teach and have them learn the lesson? Who's right? Yes, they're both right. They're both passionate about it. Feelings do matter, passions do matter, but we have to take each into consideration. We truly have to do that. They're personal, they know the flock, they tend to the flock, they unite the flock. Bob Williams, who was an elder at Camp Hill Church of Christ, who I used to go to Ghana with, he's the one who had me go to Ghana with him the first time, and he was number one in this category. And he had qualities in him. I love that guy so very much. He's been gone now for 15 years, but I remember that when we went out to the bush on Sunday mornings and would hold worship services, Bob was well known in that area. And because he was an elder, and because that society respected elders, and because he had a deep passion of a shepherd, they would literally sit him on an Ashanti throne, a seat, and they would come up, and if there was any squabbles that had been going on in the village, Bob would listen to it, and what he said, that's where it went. He was literally the judge for these tribes. They'd let him judge because they recognized that he would always give a fair shake. You know, one of the best pieces of advice I ever received from him was that, don't automatically assume if somebody does something that hurts you, assume first that they did not do it on purpose. Do that until proven otherwise. I'd say the neatest piece of advice I ever got from Bob was on his deathbed. I'd traveled with him to Ghana many times, done many, many different things with him, and he had a mask on, and he was like, Doug, come closer. And I said, yes, Bob, what is it? And I was waiting for this last bit of sage wisdom to be imparted to me. And he pulled the mask off. He says, growing old isn't for sissies, is what he said to me. I remember that. I just remember that. The older I get, now that my aches have aches, I'm thinking, yeah, he was right about that. But I remember Bob and I did so much together, and he was always interested in the long-term maturing of Christians. And we had this young guy with us in the car one day, and Bob couldn't hear that well, but there was like this new restaurant that opened up near where I lived called Hooters. You've all heard of that place before. And so we had this young guy in the back of the car with us, and we were driving by going to a preacher's meeting. We're taking a young guy to a preacher's meeting, and the young guy in the back said, hey, Doug, did you... somebody invited me to Hooters the other day. And I said, well, you can't go there. That's exploitive. And I was giving him reasons why and stuff. And Bob was just listening. And I didn't know what he was listening to. But he was concerned. He was patient. He would listen, wait until we all done talking about it. And finally, the young man said in the back, yeah, I probably shouldn't go. And then Bob, we stopped at the stoplight. Bob turned to me and said, what's a Hooter? That's what he said. I almost fell out of the car laughing. But he would always listen, and he was so fair with that. He's probably one of the men who epitomized this the most for me. But they also have signs of immaturity. If they don't grow in respect to salvation, they can tend to be independent, which leads to pride, controlling people, being that hero. They're going to rescue, they're going to do this. They're like the Rambo of the congregation. No, Adrian, I'm going to rescue us. No, listen, would you stop doing that? I know a friend who is number one in this passion, and he always rescued his children from everything. Always rescued them. He was like a hovering dad, and none of his kids are faithful to this day. And it breaks his heart because he knows he should have allowed them to maybe learn the bruises and the bumps of life instead of sheltering them and being a hero all the time. They can tend to be neglectful of their spouse, their children, themselves. I knew somebody extremely high in the passion of shepherding, and they'd always want to go out and help people in the church all the time. And their oldest son, something happened that really hurt him tremendously emotionally, that there was somebody who needed help in the church the day that this son graduated, and he dropped everything and went to go help this person in church and didn't go to his son's graduation, and he never lived that down again. You could not go back in time. He was so interested in helping the church, and he felt that it'd be best to be the good example to show that there's some things that, well, wait a second, no, you're a dad, be there at that graduation. It's an important day. They can also tend to be discouraged, tend to overwork the flock, be overly patient, be unrealistic. There are many, many things that you can do as a shepherd, but I'm telling you, if you test high in this category, you're likely thinking right now, if you tested high in this, you're thinking, you know, I have some people I want to take through this. You're saying, wow, I really like this. I could see how we could help people, because you're thinking like a shepherd. I promise you, they're always the ones who want to start doing this. Let's look at some of the other things. Let's go ahead and click it. Start a new Christians class. You see, they need you. The shepherds, they think in long-term goals. They like I was telling you about movies that certain people like. If you like Forrest Gump, because a little Forrest, everything gets there, and at the end, you know, he meets 4 presidents, he does all this and all that, and it's pretty incredible. Ping pong chat, Medal of Honor, I mean, all kinds of stuff. And then at the end, he says, I miss you, Jenny. You think, yeah, it's great, it's wonderful. I saw it turn out for Forrest. That's a movie that a shepherd would like. A Mercy Giver, they like Old Yeller at the end. You know, they like the Cry Fest movies. I was in Lewistown, Pennsylvania doing this seminar the second time, and there was this big old trucker. He was sitting off to the right because he wasn't a prophet, of course, but he was sitting over there, and he's a big old guy, big beard and stuff, and I started talking about different movies. I could, you know, if somebody says they like a particular movie, I could pretty much try to figure out what they like, and I talked about Old Yeller, and for me, not being a mercy giver, Old Yeller needed to be put down. Okay, that's just how it is. Dogs fall out the mouth. Okay, but I'm telling you, like a mercy giver, you know, it's a very moving thing. And I was talking about, you know, if you like Old Yeller, at the end, that how it touched you, you might be a mercy giver. And this trucker stood up, and he had just tears coming down his face. He said, "I loved Old Yeller," like that. I'm thinking, man, you better not get pulled over. But anyway, but they are very much into the long-term approach. They have the stick-to-itiveness to go in there. So new Christians make regular visits to drop out backsliders, shut-ins, young Christians. The reason why is your heart is going to break if somebody leaves the congregation. When people leave the church, the shepherds suffer greatly because it's like a family member. They're also more subjective to things like empty nest syndrome, things like that. Next one, develop strategies to involve church members in activities. You know, get them involved. You know, whatever plans the elders have, if you have people that are high in the gift of shepherding, you know, meet with the elders. If they come up with plans, you know, you try to come up with people. Perhaps they'll want to. I know one congregation, they had a brilliant idea on how they employed it. They had a bulletin board, and the elders and They all studied on a mission that they could plan around the congregation. They put a bulletin board up, had the 10 gift categories, had little want ads in there for things that you could just pull the want ad off and sign up, and you had a part. You had choice of different things. And they did really well on it. They almost doubled in size. Participate, lead in one-on-one studies with Christians. This is very, very important. The congregation, and particularly young Christians, need to see the shepherds. They need that guidance. And be a defender of the weak. You know, we had like an anti-bully ministry going on at Camp Hill. And I'm not saying bullies from like outside the world and stuff, but there can be bully stuff happening in congregations at times. And so there was a small group of shepherds, and their job was to watch out over the sheep, make sure they're not nipping at each other's ears. Now that helped the elders quite a bit. It helped them quite a bit. We heap too much on elders at times. Go on for the next one. Teach a class on spiritual giftedness for the equipping of the saints. Now let's get to the encourager, parakaleo, to call beside. These are very unique individuals. 7% of a congregation, usually test number 1 in this. It basically is to put courage in people, to build courage in people. Parakaleo, to call besides. Come on, everybody, come in for our group hug. You know, it's like that. It's like the slogan, we'll leave the light on for you. You know, they're welcoming people. You know, in Luke 16:25, we find this word in its purest form. When Abraham, child, remember that during your life you received good things, likewise Lazarus, bad things, but now he's being comforted here. He's being held in the bosom of Abraham. That's a comforting thing. Some encouragers, as mentioned in the Bible, you'll remember there was a guy, Joseph, of Cyprian birth, and he was, his name was Joseph. He sold everything he had, and he laid it at the apostles' feet and said, this is for the work of the church. And what did they say? They said, woo-hoo, Barnabas. They gave him a nickname, Barnabas, son of encouragement. Isn't that a great thing? I mean, when you say if encouragement had a son, it'd be you. You're the son of encouragement. What a wonderful name. But his birth certificate said something else. And so he definitely had that passion. If you looked how he carried it out, by the way, that he used the secondary gift of giving and then teaching later on for a tertiary gift when he didn't have any more money to give away at that point. And so Judas and Silas were encouragers. They have that word. John the Baptist in 3 verse 18, we always think of John the Baptist as hellfire and brimstone and screaming at people, but it said in 3:18 that he encouraged them. He encouraged them. Can you imagine? He's saying, instead of saying, repent for the king, will you just repent? The kingdom of heaven is at hand. He probably has an Irish accent too. I don't know. But the thing is, he was very encouraging when he was doing that. He was giving them courage to make the decision, not scaring them into some type of covenant. And God the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit are all called comforters. That's really the purest word, the comforter. That's why they call the Holy Spirit the Comforter in John 14:16. 2 Corinthians 1, 3 through 7, 10 times uses that word in a cluster in 4 verses, right there. Jesus says, come unto me, all ye who are labor and are heavy laden. I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. We always think, you know, Jesus had a face. He had a voice. We're going to see tomorrow when he doubled down, he said, Martha, Martha. He didn't say, Martha, Martha. He said, Martha, Martha. You know, then he's saying it. He was an encourager, a tremendous encourager. But who are these encouragers? The signs of maturity. Their attitude, they are self-driven. If they're mature, they're self-driven. They're optimists. They're motivators. I mean, they're always optimists. I mean, they're just... I want to tell you a story about Lois Manchester in Osceola. She's been gone for about 20 years, but she fought a 20-year battle with cancer. And in my first work, I was told about her, and I hadn't met her yet, and she was a huge encourager. In fact, I think that was most of the battle for her. She just stayed happy. She was incredibly happy. And when I would go in to see her in the hospital, she had like dozens of surgeries, massive loads of chemotherapy. Ultimately, she lost that battle. But you know, every time I'd go in and see her in the hospital, I would walk in and she might be really distraught. And once she saw Cheryl, she'd smile just like that. Right. She'd smile. No, she's not going to bring my day down. Yeah. We had nurses and doctors who would go in to be cheered up by her when she was in the hospital. That's how much of an encourager she was. They're expressive. They're creative communicators, practical. Mature encouragers really know how. I mean, card ministry, that is an awesome thing they do. They love writing cards. They do. They love flowers. Flowers are happy. You know, we had a florist in the congregation, and I asked her one day, I said, hey, Kathy, what do you do with like the flowers? Because she only does the very best, the fresh flowers. I mean, they last like 2 weeks. You put them on there. It's like, is there dirt in here? I don't know how they're staying. But if they still had a whole another week. So I said, hey, got an idea. We have a lot of encouragers at Camp Hill, and we're starting a hospital ministry, and people like flowers, and you know, they're not going to be in the hospital that long. If they are, then they might not be around for very long, so the flowers are still good. And I said, can we make bouquets? Instead of you throwing them out, make bouquets and take them up there? And they said, well, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be way better than that. So we made bouquets of all these flowers. I had another week. And our encouragers would go up there, and it was like, oh, hallelujah, yeah, I just came about Church of Christ, here you go, here's some flowers and stuff. As they got better, you know, somebody might say, I remember I took some up there one time, and somebody said, well, I don't go to your church. I said, I know, but you will, because we showed you love. But the point being is they're very good communicators. They have healthy relationships. They're unifiers, friendly, counselors. They're the cheerleaders of the congregation. If the church was a football team, the encouragers would be the cheerleaders, helping people to go on. And but it's in the immature things that you'll see that you have to be very careful of, because they can tend to be impulsive. They tend to interrupt people. That's a trend. I've seen it many times. They tend to act without thinking, tend to move too fast to make decisions. Why do they interrupt people, though? Why do they do it? Because they just want you to, I'll help you finish your sentence. They just want to help. They want to verbally help you do that. I had this lady in Camp Hill. She was a flaming encourager, and it was really annoying me. She'd always finish my sentences. I didn't like it. So I wanted to break her of that habit. So what I'd do is I would shift the sentence every time she tried to finish my sentence. I was walking down, and she says, the road, you know, the plank, I was on a pirate ship, and then I'd start changing the story around, and she finally said, where's this going? I said, it's going to stop, because, sister, you can't just finish everybody's sentences. I mean, we like to finish our own sentences. Okay. And she beat it, but that was an immature quality. She always wanted to finish my sentences. I wanted to tell you a story about Daniel Che. He was a discouraged encourager. Daniel was in the Kumasi School of Preaching. I was one of his teachers there in Ghana. And most of the time when you test a preacher school, it's evangelist, teacher, prophet are the top three. His top one was encourager. But I knew that already. I already knew it, because when I look out there, he was always smiling at me like he knew something about me or something. I don't know. He was like that. He was always smiling, happy and stuff. So I took him aside. I taught this at Kumasi School of Preaching, and he was the only one who came up top-notch encourager. Top-notch encourager. And we talked about that, and I asked him, what are your plans and everything? And he said that, well, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to go to Wiamosa. I'm going to do some work there and stuff. But he never had any good plans for that. He was so encouraged and just so positive that he figured, like the Field of Dreams, you build it and they will come. Well, but you show up and they may not come. And it was very, very sad for him because, he didn't have a good plan. I said, brother, you need to, before you make that move, you need to get the support. You need to have the structure. You need to have, oh no, I'll just go out there because I'm happy. And then, no, but then, it ended up costing his family. It was terrible. It was awful. He moved too fast in big decisions. They have unstable emotions if they're immature. They're prone to depression, prone to be unrealistic, and prone to be overhumorous. The two categories that are most subject to depression are encouragers and mercy givers. Encouragers is because unless if they charge their batteries, you have to have encouragers who encourage you. Because if you're cheerleading all the time and nobody is charging your batteries, you will go down. And mercy givers, because they tend to be magnets for pitiful people, and then they get into pitiful situations if they're not careful. But they're easily number 2 and number 1 for depression, I've seen many, many times. They often intense. They might encourage others into actions that are not good, or into an activity, or just out of ignorance. Sometimes a cheerleader could end up cheering for something that isn't such a great idea. I remember that I know some immature encouragers of the past who, like their kids will come to them or their friends say, well, I was thinking about opening up this or doing this, and it was a horrible idea. It was like a horrible idea. They say, well, you can do it. You can do it. Yeah, yay. And then they do it, and then their life falls apart. It's like you got to think, you got to reason. In fact, with encouragers, you need to team them up and make sure that there's a good plan. Because if you cheer for the wrong team, it's not going to turn out well. It's just not. We have to remember encouragers are by nature non-confronters. They're the opposite of the prophet. It's not the mercy giver. The encourager is the opposite of the prophet. Here's some ways you can enjoy it. Write notes of encouragement to others. They're great with that. Do you have a card ministry in church? Do you? And do you have specific people working with it? Yeah. And do these people enjoy it? Okay. Raise your hand if you're one of those people. When you take the test, Louise, you'll probably come out encourager. You might. Don't bias it, though. Is she an encourager?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, then you're stuck now. Ron diagnosed you. But here's another one. Memorize encouraging verses in the Bible. Even if you're not great at memory work, if you memorize the verses that encourage you, then you're going to remember them. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. For I'm confident of this very thing, that he which began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. For I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I've committed unto him against that day. Memorize those encouraging verses so you can pull them out like Clint Eastwood when the bad days come. When somebody, I have plans for you, plans for welfare, not calamity, that you may have a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11. Have those ready at that point. Not only can you use them for other people, but you can use them for yourself. You have to be able to be like Clint Eastwood, because the world is cruel. Horrible things are happening in this world. And you need to be able to say, go ahead, make my day. I can do all things. Jesus said so. Here's another one. Make many hospital, nursing home visits, shut-ins, visits. Why? Because you're like sunshine to them. When you go in there, if you're passionate about that, you bring light for a dark day. Be the first one to represent the church family by reaching out to the sick and the bereaved. That's really, really important, because people are not going to remember what you wore today, everything you said. They're not going to remember what color your hair is, all that other stuff, but they'll never forget how you made them feel in that occasion. And by you sending encouragers, they're by far going to, because they're the ones who need courage to face what they're dealing with. They need it put in them. Another one is develop a close relationship with a couple others who share the same gift. Why? In the same way you said, well, we had a sister's day, well, you need an encourager's day. Get together and encourage one another. Just go out and have a lighthearted, encouraging day, and that will charge your batteries because you have to cheer the team on. Volunteer at a halfway house, home for troubled teens, crisis pregnancy center. Be the first one to visit a dropout in the congregation. Teach a class on encouraging others. I have a friend, brother in Christ, baptized him. His name was Chris Fry. He was lowest on teaching by far. He liked to go to classes, he didn't want to teach it. And I asked Chris, I said, Chris, you know, it's your turn to teach. Just teach one class. Just one class. Oh, no, Doug, I can't teach. I said, Chris, I need someone who is passionate about encouragement on how to teach others to be encouraged. He said, oh, yeah, I could do that. And you know, to this day, everyone that was in that class remembers that class because it was spoken with passion. That's the only lesson I think he ever taught, but he taught it with passion. And so with that in mind, I'm going to pick up tomorrow with the mercy givers, servants, then administrators, and the givers for the last. But do you have any questions about what we covered thus far? None? Am I talking too quick? Okay. Okay. We'll make sure you get it, okay? All right. Well, yes.
As people take this test, I have not taken the test or anything like that. Have you ever had someone test equal in multiple areas, or is there?
Oh, yeah, you could have that, but there's ways that you break the tie with that. In the back of the book, it shows. So if you have that, whatever test you have, I'll go in and break the tie for you. And then again, we also cross-reference it. So yeah, and I do want to say that somebody asked me last night, I forget who it was, they said, was it maybe Steve? Somebody asked me, does the test ever vary if you take it at another time? Somebody asked me that last night. Well, you'll end up with positive, negative scores. On average, a person will have 2/3 positive and negative scores. That's indicative to one's perspective in Christ at that moment. But the positive, negative scores. Sometimes people are all negative, and their top score is like 1. And then they're like, or -1, and then it's like down to 16. That's indicative that maybe they're going through something, that they have a negative outlook. But I had a couple named Dinah and Osa, and they had taken the test, and they said it somewhere, they couldn't find it, and then 3 weeks later they came over to my place to eat, and I said, hey, where's your test? I need to put that in there. And he said, well, we can't find it. I said, okay, let's do it now. So we did it, and I totaled it up, gave them their test, recorded down, and then about a week later they said, hey, Doug, we found that test that we took. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, how did it turn out? And they said, well, everything was pretty much in the same order, except that all the scores were really low. I said, they said, what does that mean? I said, it means that you were having a bad day when you took it. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, what do you mean? What happened when you took it? Well, we kind of got into an argument and everything. And so we said, nah, let's go ahead and take it. And we took it. And so everything came across negative. But when they took it in a more positive mood, it just slid up. That's usually what ends up happening. Other things that I could tell from the test, entire congregations, you can tell if they're splitting, if they have a split in them, if they recently split. I was down at Casa Grande, Arizona. There was a church that had a split, and I went to the split of that broke off of there. They wanted me to come out there. And I wasn't aware that they were a spinoff of a split. But when I did the test, I looked at the chart and like it was all like they're half gone. Like, where are they? There's no prophets, no teachers, no evangelists. They're all encouragers, mercy givers, and they're all over on that side. I'm thinking, all right, this is indicative of that you're a break off or something broke off. And they said, well, about a year before we broke off of them. Churches usually split over spiritual giftedness. I found 4 congregations that were just like that, where I could tell within the last 3 years whether there was a split and people broke off, because people will go. And then you have a different task trying to have this back. You got to adjust, because now you're not represented in that area. And so you can tell a lot about the test, and by you typing in Salina on there and it comes up, I'm going to put that in your data block, and then it's going to show where your strengths and your weaknesses are, where you need to pay attention to. There are some great strategies. They do work, and I've seen this happen so many times, where an entire congregation, once you start building the mission around the people. See, like my mom, she was a brilliant cook. She's still alive. She still cooks. But, I mean, when I would open up the cupboard and say there's like nothing to eat. And she'd shoo me out of the way, grab stuff out of the same cupboard, and come back a half hour later, voila, there's a meal there. And I learned a long time ago that you can only work with what's in the cupboard. If you try to make something that you do not have the ingredients for, it's going to be a very difficult task. And so too many times we try to say, I'm going to do this. You have to have missions that reflect you, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. You start out on a personal basis and how to integrate that within the congregation. So there's 2 different perspectives, and so you'll know your weaknesses and your strengths. And personally, and we have an awesome session tomorrow afternoon. It's going to be, that's the most fun of all. It's titled, What's in Your Shopping Cart? Any other questions? Yes?
Online, you have sometimes as the middle answer, and the birth is not sure. Like if I look at not sure, I would choose either positive or negative. To me, sometimes it's down the middle.
Yeah, it should be not sure on the side. So but that's what I said up here. If it's not sure, just check the middle one. Hey, just pick the one in the middle. I need to talk to Richard. He put that on there, but it'll still come out.
Well, it's still in the middle.
Yeah, it's the middle answer
I had the
there.
same question myself. So.
Yeah. What's your second gift, by the way? Prophet? Shepherd?
Well, shepherd and servant.
Okay. That's your little prophet coming out there. Is that your husband?
Yeah.
Oh, did you take the test? Oh.
He could do that, James.
Yeah.
He's probably like
I'm going to a prayer big problem.
he's probably
Okay.
mercy and missionary. We don't need to take the time right
Okay.
off.
And any other questions? So tomorrow we'll wrap it up. We'll have it in the Bible class, and then in the sermon, we'll cover the last 2. And then after, I think there's a meal here tomorrow. So afterwards, we'll have a session called What's in the Shopping Cart. And then as I get your data in, I'll produce a document for your leadership. And it will have entire graphs, strategies, strengths, weaknesses, proposals for you. It basically functions as a major compass to help guide you. That's what it does. Okay. You are dismissed, I guess.